All right. Well, again, welcome everybody to a conversation with Katie Ziglar, the UNC General Alumni Association. I think we will go ahead and get started now. Thank you all for being here. And to get us started, I'm going to turn it over to Laura Nestor.
Okay, great. Thanks, Joe. So, hi everyone. I am Laura Nestor. I am the leader of the Winston-Salem Carolina Club, and I'm grateful to know that some on my team are here tonight, and that all of you are joining us for this conversation with Ackland's Katie Ziglar. And I'm very excited to be with you. I'm going to have a hard time not smiling because I'm a smiler, and also I'm really excited. This event is a long time coming, and there's a backstory to it that I'm going to share. The story has three elements. So one is the value of a GAA membership. Another is the incredible connections to be made by participating in the GAA's Carolina clubs. And then thirdly, it's the powerful and unexpected impact of participating in the university's Give UNC fundraising effort. And so the story starts in May of 2019. Because I'm a member of the GAA, I received my May-June issue of the Carolina Alumni Review. And I was so intrigued by the story of Katie Ziglar, who had been in the inaugural group of women who were admitted to the Moorhead Scholarship Program. She graduated in 1979 and had an amazing career in the world of art, and had recently returned to Chapel Hill to lead the Ackland. And so with that in my mind, at some point later, I was talking to a very dear and supportive member of the Winston-Salem Carolina Club, my friend Myra Argard Esperson, and telling her all about this amazing woman I'd read about. And she says, well, I know Katie. We were friends in high school. They were roommates. And I couldn't believe it. I was so struck by that connection. And so Myra and I envisioned a trip for our club down to Chapel Hill to tour the Ackland, meet with Katie, see the exhibits, and learn about her vision for the future. And we were all set to go. With Myra's connections, we landed a spot on Katie's calendar, May 2nd, 2020. Well, so we all know what happened in the spring of 2020. And our club programming was canceled. All of our events came back off the calendar, and that really could have been the end of the story. But fortunately, it was not, because remember, there are three elements. So GAA membership led to a connection with this amazing woman and this opportunity. And then coronavirus steps in as the story's villain. Boo. Well, what does that have to do with Give UNC? So Ackland was on my mind over the summer. I was disappointed that we hadn't been able to go visit. And on Give UNC, I just decided to make a modest donation to the museum, which I never had done before. And not long after that, I had a call from Andrew Parrish, who is the Assistant Director of Development at Ackland. And when I explained to him about what had happened and how disappointed I was, he immediately saw the value in connecting alumni to the Ackland and its programming. And with his help and the support of our GAA coordinators of outreach, Joe Patrizzi and Anna Brooks Witchard, here we are tonight. So now I'm going to turn it over to Andrew for the rest of the program, with my sincere gratitude for making it all possible for all of us to be here for this conversation with Katie.
Thank you, Laura. I've heard you say that story several times, and it's still such a great and emblematic of just the kind of Carolina community and just how great things happen when Carolina people put their minds together. So thank you for initiating this, and for all the good folks over at the GAA for helping to put this on and giving us an opportunity to share about the Ackland to our Carolina community. And so welcome on behalf of the Ackland. I want to say welcome to all the many alums out there, and we're so glad that you're here. And I've seen in the chat box already that we have some Winston-Salem people here. So Katie, you're among your home folk. So there are plenty of friendly spirits here. As Laura mentioned, my name is Andrew Parrish, and I'm the Assistant Director of Development here at the Ackland. And I'm pleased to introduce Katie today. And then after she shares some updates with you about what's going on at the Ackland, I'll serve as your moderator. And I'll just try to bring in as many of your questions as we have time to answer. Just so you know, audience microphones are automatically muted. You're not on video. And so if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, we just ask that you ask them in the chat box or in the Q&A function in here in Zoom. And if you hover over the Zoom screen with your mouse, you should see the controls at the bottom to access the chat box. We expect this program to go until 7 p.m. And so if you'll just type your questions in the chat box, or anytime that you have them, starting now all the way to the end of the program, that will help us get to as many of them as possible at the end. When thinking about the Ackland, Chancellor Guskowitz has recently remarked that the Ackland is one of Carolina's most valuable resources for public education and community outreach, and a home for unique voices and experiences. And here to tell you a little bit more about this jewel at Carolina that is such a place of unique voice and experiences, and has public outreach and community outreach and public education at its core is Katie. Now, to give you a little bit of background on Katie, Katie is a native of Winston-Salem, and as Laura mentioned, was in UNC's first class of Moorhead Scholars to include women. So she was a trailblazer at an early age, and she moved to Chapel Hill 4 years ago to become the 7th director of the Ackland. She's worked in museums for over 30 years, including 13 years as the Director of External Affairs at the Smithsonian's Freer-Sackler Galleries. She has a Master of Arts in Islamic art and architecture from the American University in Cairo. And she's especially proud of spurring the Ackland to make nearly a dozen purchases of extraordinary Islamic art in her time here. And so now Katie's going to share a few words with you about what the Ackland has been up to and what we have planned for the future. But before she does that, we actually are going to show you a short video that we made a couple years ago at our 60th anniversary, just to give you a little visual introduction to the Ackland, and if you're not as familiar with it.
Go outside yourself, outside this museum, to a place that the art itself is taking you.
When I come in, I see a lot of old friends.
It's wonderful to look at beautiful things.
What I see in a picture will be very different from what you see or anyone else, and that's the beauty.
It's the supreme form of communication because it doesn't require words. It's something that comes in through the eye and goes right to the brain and can be interpreted by the viewer.
I keep coming back to Ackland because I love the combination of art and of history. It gives me a wide perspective on the past and an idea of the range of possibilities for the future.
I remember the day the Ackland Museum opened. It was a beautiful day. The sun was out.
The first 60 years of the Ackland were a time of building the collections, building the capacity to take care of the art and understand what it is. But we would not be much of a vital force on the campus of the university or in our community if we just concentrated on collecting and preserving.
Big part of why I work here is because I think as a university, we're trying to inspire and engage new intellectual efforts. Most of education is based on dialogue.
And the museum is that place where you can actually talk to others.
Now it's a time when people are finding the power of art. The creative thing is more important than ever.
But the museum, thankfully, is still a place that you trust being there. You recognize it's somewhere that you might actually meet someone different.
Especially here because you're in the middle of the University of North Carolina, so you have an academic community that you can draw on for this.
And I just love coming here like tonight and seeing the museum full of people, and I love coming to exhibitions and seeing students here. And so thanks so much to the museum for all that it does, not just for me, someone who's beyond school, but for the student population and for the entire culture of Chapel Hill and beyond.
When you're turning 60, now you know what they say, 60 is the new 30. Anytime I need a break, anytime I need inspiration, I just come to you and you provide it.
I'm wishing you many, many, many years of health, success, and generosity for all.
Happy birthday, Ackland Art Museum. I hope you continue to inspire artists and visitors, children, and people of all ages for another 60 years and beyond.
All right, happy
birthday!
Happy 60th birthday to the Ackland Art Museum. We're glad to take care of you every day, and we look forward to many more years to come.
Wishing the Ackland Museum a happy birthday and happy to be a part of art history and have my work hanging in this museum.
Dear Ackland, happy 60th birthday! Happy birthday, Ackland!
Happy birthday, Ackland! Happy birthday, Ackland!
And I wish you 60 more and beyond, more years of picking up on trends, setting trends, and moving us all forward in terms of visual arts.
Well, hello, everyone. It's great to be here with you this evening to talk about the Ackland Art Museum, UNC Chapel Hill's local museum with a global outlook. Many of you remember the Ackland for the infamous reason that the body of the founder, William Hayes Ackland, is in a crypt in the museum, per his wishes, discreetly tucked away off Gallery 2 to your left as you enter. In fact, the reason we have the Ackland at Carolina is that Duke refused the critical term that he wanted to be buried in the museum. Duke's loss is our gain. Perhaps you visited what was then a rather sleepy place to enjoy some art when you were an undergraduate. Perhaps that's one of the things you always meant to do, but never got around to. Regardless, this evening, I'm going to give you the lowdown on the museum and its status today. Believe it or not, the Ackland, which first opened its doors in 1958, is now a powerhouse on campus. Why on earth would I say such a thing? Well, let's start with the rich and varied collections, unlike those of any other museum in the state of North Carolina. We are known first and foremost for our collection of works on paper, some 13,000 drawings, prints, and photographs. To wit, in 2017, we received a transformational gift of 137 Dutch and Flemish 17th century drawings, including 7 by Rembrandt, as covered by the New York Times, as you see here. Not only did this largesse from double alumni Sheldon Peck and his wife Lena make us the only public university art museum in the country with a collection of drawings by Rembrandt, in one fell swoop, it made the Ackland a serious source of Northern European drawings, of interest to scholars around the world. Here is one of Rembrandt's drawings with his handwriting on it, saying, "A little boy with an old coat over his head." I was lucky enough to be here when this remarkable lightning struck, the most fortuitous single gift to a museum of my career. And I'll tell you later about our extensive plans for the collection, which is already being used for display and teaching. I'll bet many of you may not know that the Ackland has the only collection of Asian art in our state, and it happens to be one of the finest in the entire Southeast. This magical gallery of a few years ago featured light-sensitive Japanese and Chinese screens of great quality and rareness, along with sculpture and other works on the theme of nature. The oversized contemporary piece in the center by Cambodian artist Sohit Pitch is made of rattan and wire to resemble the lotus, one of 8 auspicious symbols of Buddhism. 2 other highlights out of a major collection put together by Sherman Lee, the great Asianist who was director of the Cleveland Museum and retired to Chapel Hill, making the Asians Ackland collection his last project. A Thai head of a Buddha of the 16th century on the left, and a sublime torso of a Khmer figure from Cambodia on the right, which was gifted to us by Sherman Lee's daughter, Catherine Lee Reed, who is a member of our board. The Ackland is also known for its European painting, and perhaps our greatest example is Eugene Delacroix's Cleopatra and the Peasant of 1838. This piece, which was little known to the outside world, became one of the stars of a recent international exhibition on Delacroix that started at the Met in New York. The folks at the Louvre, the second venue for the show, had passed on it until they saw it at the Met. Then they liked it so much, they gave it a wall to itself in Paris. I can't tell you how many friends of the Ackland were thrilled to see it there and emailed photos back to us. It's unusual because most paintings of Cleopatra show her dying after the bite of the snake, but Delacroix chose to depict the moment she is intently eyeing the snake brought to her by the peasant. We see her in the critical moment of making up her mind. And I saw this painting just yesterday and looked at it again, and the focus from her eyes to the snake, which is a little bit hard to see, he's covered in foliage in a basket, but that line of sight is riveting. Next. Peter Paul Rubens' Germanicus and Agrippina of 1615 reminds us of the way faces are depicted on coins since ancient times. There's a picture also of the same subject in the National Gallery where the 2 husband and wife are shifted. The wife is in the front and the husband is in the back. On the right, Emma Sandy's portrait of Mary Emma Jones of 1874 is a recent acquisition, the first pre-Raphaelite painting to enter the collection. We love that it's by a female artist, and you can almost tell that by the details of her hair and the ribbons in her hair and her pearls and the beautiful round buttons on her dress and blouse. As I've already alluded to, we share our outstanding collection of European painting with the world. Here is another of our treasures, Valentine de Bologne's St. John the Evangelist, 1622 to 23 on the left, and on the right, it's all packed up to go to the Met. There is no shortage of classical art at the Ackland either. This ceramic Egyptian wedget eye of Ra from 7 to 4 centuries before the Common Era was a symbol of a protective deity. Next. And American Modernist work is the final great Ackland strength I'll mention. Rose Piper's Slow Down Freight Train, 1946 to 47, about the northern migration of Black people from the South, is a great favorite to teach from, with its highly graphic qualities and striking color. She's another female artist, one whom I'd never heard of until I came to the Ackland. Perhaps my favorite artist of American modernism and one of my favorite artworks in the collection is this sinuous depiction called Tree Forms from 1932 by Arthur Dove. Dove found a correlation between art and music that is evident in the implied movement here. And I'll end our dive into American modernism with this great beauty of a big painting, 8 by 11 feet by Irishman turned American Sean Scully. It's Red Durango of 1991. Using a vocabulary limited to stripes, Scully manages to create an almost sculptural work with patches of lines going in opposite directions. I wish you could see the thick, gleaming paint on the surface. Now, to switch gears for a moment, I want to show you two areas for which the Ackland is not yet known, but is making great strides forward. In recent years, we've been consciously expanding our holdings of art by peoples from Southern Africa, a stimulating enrichment to our more traditional holdings of classical art from the Western and Central areas of this tremendously diverse continent. This recently purchased headrest from around 1900, though not large in and of itself, has a powerfully sculptural and graphic presence that will be a focal point in our gallery. Also from South Africa and a recent acquisition is this spectacular bead collar from the Fingu people around the turn of the 20th century. If you remember my background in Islamic art, you'll not be surprised to find that we are adding to our modest collection objects of singular importance, like this highly ornamented page with burnished gold from a Quran of the 9th or 10th century, made in North Africa or the Near East. Notice how the Kufic script in black ink written with a reed pen, not a brush, stresses the horizontality of the letters from right to left in concert with the horizontal format of the parchment page. This is from Surah or chapter 97 of the Quran, Al-Qadar, the power, which speaks of the night of glory when angels and the Holy Spirit descend. It says, "It is all peace until the break of dawn." Next. Here are a 16th century Iznik plate on the left and a prayer rug fragment from an important mosque in Ottoman Turkey. Notice that floral decoration is central to both. I could go on and on about the collection, but let's talk now about how we see our purpose at the Ackland. What is all this art for? Well, here's what we like to call the arrow. And in doing our internal branding, we figured out what we do. We call it our offer. We look close and think far. How we do it, what our values are. They're playful, they're rigorous, and they're responsive. And why we do it, our mission, which is the art of understanding. Where we're going, our vision is to be the preeminent public university art museum in the nation. The Ackland's goal, as I said, is to become the preeminent public university art museum in America, the most visited and highly regarded. As part of that, we're focused on being a center of influence in the university, the Research Triangle, the state of North Carolina, our nation, and the world by extending our reach in myriad ways. I'll give you a brief overview. First, there's our penetration into the university. Every year, a whopping 10,000 students, undergrads, graduate, and professional, are taught in classes at the Ackland, an astonishing number that just about tops what any other university art museum, public or private, in the US achieves. We teach students in art history and studio art, but range far beyond into sociology, religion, classics, anthropology, women's and gender studies, medicine, and more, much more. A couple of years ago, the new professor of dental anatomy, a fundamental class in dental school, came to arrange for his 80 students to do an observation and drawing exercise in our gallery, which continues every year except, of course, this one. Now, as far as teaching K through 12 goes, we serve 3,500 students a year from more than a dozen counties right in the museum. We offer $200 travel grants to defray costs for students coming to make field trips more affordable. Students come for lively learning experiences with original works of art, looking closely, thinking carefully, and responding creatively to art from around the world stimulates new ways of thinking for teachers and students alike, in addition to making meaningful connections with the school curriculum. Many of the K through 12 students who visit the Ackland have never had the opportunity to set foot in a museum before. The Ackland's low-key, interactive, and inclusive approach allows students to engage with art reflectively and to learn alongside their peers in an educational experience like no other. This is a direct extension of the Ackland's mission of the art of understanding. Furthermore, teacher development programs held both in the schools and in the museum provide teachers with strategies and tools to help incorporate art into the curriculum and expand the methods available to accomplish learning goals. Remember our motto, look close, think far? This little fellow's got it. When I arrived 4.5 years ago, I asked people what the Ackland's biggest unexploited opportunity was. Visibility and relevance to the community was the answer I got repeatedly. So we decided to make the front of the building more alluring and attractive by creating what we call the terrace galleries and installing great interactive works. Here is our first offering, Los Trompos, the Tops, by Mexican design firm Ezraue y Cadena. The tops were wonderfully popular. We even put a few on campus. Los Trompos came down in September 2017 to make room for Step Right Up, a terrific stickwork piece by internationally known local artist and UNC alum Patrick Dougherty, who worked his magic by creating unique and engaging sculptural forms in front of the Ackland out of saplings, using an army of 180 volunteers over a whirlwind period of 3 weeks. Patrick's inspiration was this anthropomorphic aquamanila, or water vessel, from the museum's collection, an ancient animal-shaped pouring vessel. Next. In the array of animals and vessels he created, there was even a Carolina ram. Now I'll give one example of the 20 exhibitions we've produced or hosted since I've been director. The Outwin Bucheever is a national portrait contest juried by a panel of distinguished artists. Approximately 80 works from all media are selected to be in a traveling show from the Smithsonian's National Portrait Gallery. The first place winner in 2017 was Amy Sherrill with Little Miss Everything on the left. She had just been selected to paint Michelle Obama's now famous official portrait, and you see her, the portrait, and Mrs. Obama on the right. This show was a tremendous hit and proved that we could have a near blockbuster in the summertime when there were few students on campus. I must also note that Amy Sherrill had her inaugural solo exhibition, the first exhibition she ever had as an artist all by herself at Carolina's Stone Center for Black Culture and History. Amy is now at the top of the contemporary art game. For our 60th anniversary in 2018, we hosted Asheville-based artist Kurt Persky to undertake his Red Ball project on the campus and around Chapel Hill for 7 days. How do we do it? Remember, one of the ways is playfully. Students and the town loved it. Now, I mentioned earlier that I would catch you up on our plans for the marvelous Peck collection of Dutch and Flemish drawings. Well, with some of the endowment that was given by the Pecks, we recruited Dana Cowan to be the first Sheldon Peck curator for European and American art up to 1950. Here she is, standing beside the Virgin and Child with the infant St. John the Baptist of the 1560s by Agnolo Bronzino. Dana is piloting a major international show from the Peck collection that will start at the Ackland and travel to the Netherlands, Asia, and one other venue in Europe or the US, putting the Ackland firmly on the map. The exhibition will be accompanied by a scholarly catalog and a state-of-the-art website distinguished by high-resolution images, very much high resolution. Next. In the meantime, we showed all 7 of our Rembrandt drawings in honor of the 350th anniversary of the artist's death in October 2019. Thank goodness it wasn't in the fall of 2020. Now we're looking at perhaps the most important slide of all in this presentation. You can see the T-shaped Ackland, and it's on South Columbia Street, not far from the intersection of Franklin. In its 40,000 gross square feet, the Ackland is absolutely bursting at its seams. An extension was considered but shelved in the early 2000s, almost 20 years ago. If the museum needed more space that long ago, just imagine how much more the need has grown in the interim. We just completed a half-year-long consultancy with the premier museum space planner in the nation to understand how much of what different kinds of space a new building, the Ackland, needs and what adjacencies are critical to have. We have learned that we require a building of about 100,000 gross square feet to provide all the spaces and functions we're lacking now: teaching classrooms, an auditorium, and a cafe, to name a few. Our needs are too large to fit on the footprint in our current location, which is hemmed in by other buildings. So we are looking for another location in the same general vicinity. There's several options, So stay tuned on that. In any event, I am determined to lead the process that creates a new Ackland in a fabulous building that is a showcase for the university, the town, and our state. And now I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have or hear your comments.
Well, thank you, Katie. So yeah, we
Go ahead.
So we would now welcome, please, I know the chat box has already been warmed up by you, giving shout outs to each other from California and as close as Winston-Salem, and I'm sure a whole lot of places in between. So we'd love to have whatever questions you have, so please put them in the chat box. And I think, Laura, were you actually about to ask a question?
Yes, I'm raising my hand.
Okay.
So one of the things that really intrigued me about the article when I was reading it was, Katie, your experience in the art world before coming back to Chapel Hill. And so I'm wondering in what ways those connections have made it possible for you to make and plan the moves that you've executed so that the Ackland can continue to grow and thrive.
Well, thanks for that question, Laura, which is a really interesting one. There are lots of different ways I could answer it, but mainly I would say that the chance to bring in art from other places is very important to us as much as we lend out. And having connections all around the art world in the United States and abroad is frankly been helpful and will be even more helpful as we go along. The show, the Outwin Bucheever portrait show that I talked about with the Amy Sherrill picture that won first prize, came from the National Portrait Gallery, and I worked for a number of years at the American Art Museum of the Smithsonian, which shares the same building with the Portrait Gallery. So I know a lot of people there, and it was easy to get that exhibition to the Ackland. So things like that are I'll be trying to do more and more of.
Great, thank you for everything.
And I see some questions are already coming in. And so, Katie, one question is from somebody who was a first-year student back in 1967 when the Ackland was just an infant, and was talking about how sleepy the Ackland was then, and how this person's so ecstatic to see how it's grown and how it's increased its importance. And the question is, will the Ackland plan programs to educate alumni?
We would love to do that. We would love to take an Ackland show on the road, and we've done that a little bit. I made a presentation in Atlanta and a few other places that were fairly well received, I think. And we would love to be able to share with alums what is going on, and especially about the art. We're one of the museums that, though our budget is relatively modest, we have a fairly good budget for acquisitions, endowment monies that actually come from Mr. Ackland and others who have set them up over the years. So shopping for art is something we get to do every year, and it's a lot of fun.
And then one other question is asking about our museum space and if it's ever used for receptions or special events.
Yes, very frequently. We host events that are held by parts of the university and by outside groups. Our spaces are not as commodious and well configured as we would like for events, and that's something that we'll make sure our new building hits the ball out of the park on, because that's really important. Right now, we're not allowed to do personal events like weddings, but we hope to have a building that would be very conducive to those and attractive for people who might wish to do them, and that will be allowed to do them, because that's a great source of unrestricted funding for the museum.
And then Katie, we're getting some questions about the space for the new museum. One question was related to Porthole Alley and asking if it's possible for us to extend backwards and purchase the property where Porthole used to be, or is that even possible?
We're working with the architects of the university and university leadership in looking around at sites for a new Ackland. I don't know where we're going to end up exactly, but I can tell you that we did a study with the business school the first year I was at the Ackland on where a new Ackland should be located. And we decided definitively that it needs to be quite close to where the current Ackland is, because students who are taking classes in the Ackland and their professors need to be able to get there quickly and then out to their next classes. So that location on North Campus is really important.
And one other question, Katie, in terms of the fundraising for the new Ackland Museum, is asking, do we plan to raise funds for the new facility in a public-private partnership manner?
We certainly hope so. We're doing everything in our power to be included in a bond that would be for the university, perhaps more than one part of the University of North Carolina's system. And there are some examples that go ahead of us of where buildings have been paid for about half by bond and then the other half privately fundraised. The business school's new extension is an example of that, and also the School of Nursing. So that's the model we hope to follow. And I think if we can establish the public part of the partnership, we will be able to then, with your help, Andrew, and that of many other people, we'll be able to get the private part as well.
And then we had a question about how does the Ackland decide what exhibits to bring in? Are there certain themes that the Ackland wants, or is it based on availability, or how do those decisions get made?
That's a great question. We have so many opportunities and so little space. We do about 4 major what we would call major exhibitions a year. And we do some commissions as well. In this room we call Art And. We do special single artist commissions that last for about a year at a time. So the process of which exhibitions we choose to do is one that the curators and I get together and we talk about things that are possible, either coming from outside from another museum or things that we could put together ourselves from our own collection and with loans. Those tend to be much more expensive undertakings than bringing in shows from other museums. However, I will say that next summer, God willing, we will be bringing in a show from the Asia Society in New York of the Rockefeller collection, which Sherman Lee also had a hand in. He advised the Rockefeller family on their purchases of Asian art just as he worked to build the collection here at the Ackland. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that it is a very expensive show for us. It's $500,000 all said and done to do the programming and meet all the requirements. We have an alarm system that goes on overnight, and then university security is watching our building for us all the time. And the Asia Society is requiring that we have guards in the building 24 hours a day, for example. That's why it's so expensive. So we juggle costs and we juggle theme. We like to show a variety of things because we cover basically all art of all times. We're a mini Met, and it's just interesting to see how things shape up we plan about 4 to 5 years out as much as we can. COVID has really done a number on that for us, but we'll get back into our stride when it's over.
And somebody had commented about the new Joan Mitchell and Milton Avery paintings that we've given, that we were recently been given, and asked if you had mentioned that. And I don't think you had yet, but
No, I haven't, but that's fantastic. A donor, UNC alumni and North Carolinian named Jane Kearns has so kindly bequeathed to us 2 paintings by Joan Mitchell and 1 by Milton Avery that will be the first Joan Mitchells in the collection. They're astoundingly beautiful abstract paintings, and a Milton Avery that we actually have some other work by Milton Avery, but nothing from the decade of this work, which is the 60s. And it's a big painting and beautiful colors, pastel colors. And so we're very grateful to her for sending them our way after she's finished with them.
And we had a question about our Asian gallery, asking if there are any plans to increase Asian exhibits. I think you mentioned the Buddha and Shiva, Lotus and Dragon from the Asia Society, but this person is particularly interested in Vietnamese art. What could you, are there any plans to ever have any connections to Vietnamese art?
Well, we do have some Vietnamese work, not a great deal, mostly ceramics, and we actually have some Vietnamese ceramics in the brand new show we have called Clouding, that because we're closed due to construction around the building, nobody has been able to see yet, but except online, I think. But we do have some ceramics in that show. So, and we're very interested in the art of Vietnam and all of Southeast Asia. So we will be happy to think about what's possible with Vietnam. Our handicap at the moment is that we lost our curator of Asian art, and there's a hiring freeze at the university now due to the COVID situation. So it'll be a little while before we can replace her. It takes about, unfortunately, 9 months to a year to recruit someone, and then they have to have time to move, complete their duties wherever they happen to be. That can be another 6 months or so. So it's going to be a while before we have another Asian curator.
We had a question that asked, what would be your dream acquisitions for the museum?
Oh man, wow. That's a question. Some of the great contemporary art that we see today that's almost unaffordable is one thing. And I mean, for me, obviously more Islamic art. I want us to tell so many stories through Islamic art that is out there, and it's just a matter of having the money to buy it.
And speaking of Islamic art, we had a question that was asking, how did you actually become interested in Islamic art?
Yeah.
Was it the calligraphy or interest in the Middle East? And this person's actually from your former neck of the woods in Washington, D.C.
Oh, great. Well, it happened at Carolina, like a lot of things. I took a course my final semester in college with a visiting professor from Columbia named Jerry Lynn Dodds, who was just tremendous, and a ball of energy and enthusiasm and knowledge, great knowledge. And I was so excited because I was a European history major, and I was so excited by seeing the visual culture of the other part of the world, that if you think of the Crusades, for example, it was so much fun to be on the flip side of that, and also to realize that this is the place where East and West meet each other and influence each other. And it's the art of the third of the three monotheistic religions. So it had a lot of, and not many people in our country had studied it or knew much about it, especially way back then. So I realized it was a field where there was a lot to do, and it turned out to be that way for sure.
And then somebody also asked if you've ever had to has the Ackland ever had to turn down an exhibition that you would have really liked to have had because the Ackland didn't have space for it?
Yes, that the space is an issue very frequently. And the other thing is we were going to do a fabulous show of Egyptology called Striking Power. It was about iconography in Egyptian art and iconoclasm, the breaking of sculptures and other things. Really focusing on when this the destruction of this work happened, because we all think of it as being happening in the contemporary time, but it turns out that a lot of the gods that were pictured they had their noses cut off or other kinds of violence done to them because it was thought to have ruined their power, and it was done very, very close to the time in which they were made, for example. Anyway, this was a show from Brooklyn Museum of Art, which has a famous Egyptian collection, and we had to turn that show down because of financial problems as a result of the COVID problem that we've had.
Yeah. And then we also had a question related to kind of the educational outreach of the Ackland, asking if you could highlight a few examples of how the Ackland works with schools and community groups to promote cultural understanding.
Yes, well, we have a number of tours for students that teachers set up in advance with our education and interpretation department. So the teachers will talk about what kind of curriculum they want to address in the visit, and then the students are given things to look at and often draw, and they talk about things that really relate to the curriculum that they have come to work on. With community groups, before COVID, we were blowing the lid off that. We were doing a lot of outreach. So we were having gardening clubs and book clubs and scout troops and any kind of organization you can think of. And we were starting to do specialized tours for people suffering from Alzheimer's and their caregivers. So those are tours that are done by one person for the Alzheimer's patient and caregiver, and learning better how to do that. We're going to be working on tours for the hearing impaired and the visually impaired as well when we get back into real gear after this COVID period.
And I should also mention that we have a new website, well, relatively new. It's new since April, but it's a completely overhauled website. It's really fabulous. And there are some really great examples of how we're working even in a current virtual society, how we're aiding teachers and giving them digital tools as they're teaching digitally right now. We're doing close look videos that aid teachers to help them basically across any subject area improve students' critical thinking skills. And so those can be found there. And then we're doing many cultural programs right now as well. In fact, tomorrow, I believe it is, that we have Shaniqua Gay, our commissioned artist, who did a tribute to Breonna Taylor, and she's doing an artist talk tomorrow. And then next Friday, we're doing an Art for Lunch program, where if you have a lunch break from 12 to 1 and you have internet access, you can tune in to see our Art for Lunch program next week. That's an initiative that we have with the School of Medicine, and they started an elective class in the School of Medicine 4 years ago. Can we talk about race? And so we're going to do a program highlighting that partnership as well. So yeah, lots of things going on. We're also in the chat box, Katie, it's interesting, we have a lot of people reminiscing about how one person said that thinking about the Ackland brought back a lot of great memories. She said she met her husband at Carolina, and Ackland was actually one of their first dates.
Oh, right.
And I actually can commiserate there, because as a young married couple, I remember coming to the Ackland for Second Fridays for a free date night. Maybe that says more about how cheap I am. But yeah, the Acklands, we have some people going down memory lane. We also have another person thanking you for being such an exemplary role model to this parent's daughter. And how the daughter's name is Sarah. She considers you an absolute rock star in the world of art history. And this person's question was how can we persuade our new chancellor and the university to fund a new building for the Ackland rather than just renovating or expanding our current facility?
Exactly. Well, because we've done our space use study with the world's, I consider her the world's greatest expert on museum space. And we have learned that we need about 100,000 gross square feet to do all the things we do well and better, and to have room for growth for the future. We are definitely going to build a new building. Renovating the current Ackland is not really an option for us at all. So the Chancellor Duskowitz is very aware of this. And as Andrew pointed out earlier in the evening, he is a big fan of the Ackland. He and his wife come to openings with us as much as they can. And we've lent art from the Ackland to the Chancellor's residence. I'm very happy to do so, and the Chancellor's office area as well in South Building. So I think we have a real friend there. The university, I don't think, has the money at its disposal to build a new Ackland, but they certainly have the means to help us politically with the state, and also with private fundraising as well.
Well, I think, Katie, we're at time, and it's about 7 o'clock now, and we are trying to be good stewards of everybody else's time. I think we had a very lively chat room, and it was great to see all these great comments from people. And I think people wanted to say thank you to you for, you could have taken your talents anywhere. I know one commenter said you could have taken your talents anywhere. And they're very thankful that you decided to come back to Chapel Hill, to your native university. And so I think there's a lot of gratitude on people's behalf. So,
well, that's so nice to hear. I thank all of you for spending this time with us tonight. It's been fun to get together and talk about the Ackland. And if anybody is grateful, I am the one who is grateful, because being at the Ackland has afforded me an incredible set of opportunities that I'm just so excited about. And we have, as you can see with Andrew, we have such wonderful staff, and everybody knows how great Carolina is. So it's pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thanks to everyone for being here tonight. Thank you to the GAA for giving us a great platform to talk about some of the exciting things happening at the Ackland. And certainly, if one of the things as a takeaway point, if you're interested in supporting the Ackland, you can do so by just going to our website. You can either join as a member. If you'd like to learn more about membership, feel free to go to our website and click on the membership link. Or if you'd like to give to our unrestricted fund, certainly we're free and open and accessible to everyone. We never charge anybody for an exhibition or just to come into the museum. And if you'd like to support the museum and give an unrestricted gift to the museum of any amount, we would certainly appreciate that as well. So I'll turn it back over to Joe to close this out.
Well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Laura. This was awesome. We've done obviously this year a lot of events like this. I don't know that we've had a group of people, of participants, as engaged and as talkative and as excited as we did for this one. So thank you all for being here tonight. Keep an eye out on your email as well as alumni.unc.edu, especially as we continue in this time. We're offering as many virtual events as we can, trying to cover all areas like the Ackland and athletics, and trying to highlight different departments on campus as well. So it's, in a strange way, it's an exciting time. Before 2020, I don't think we ever would have had people coming in from California to talk to Katie tonight. So that's certainly a huge silver lining. So again, I'll just close by saying thank you, and we hope to see you on another event with the GAA sometime soon.